confirmed open.
Okay, members, so thank you. We're a confirmed open session. We do have a quorum, and I now call the meeting to order. Agus tá fáilte ribh a lig, go dtí an cruinniú seo. You're all very welcome to this morning's meeting. Can I remind anyone in the public gallery that mobile phones must be turned off? Mobile tablet devices can be used through a Wi-Fi connection, and all devices should be muted. Password details are available in the gallery for anyone wanting to connect to the Assembly's Wi-Fi network, and no recordings or photographs may be taken. Can I also remind members about the protocols regarding the use of electronic devices? Please switch all mobile devices to airplane mode and activate Wi-Fi connection. Please also use tablets discreetly and in a way which does not interfere with proceedings, and please remember the sensitivity of the microphones in the room. Finally, I would remind members of your responsibility to declare any interest in any of the items under discussion today. Do members wish to declare any items in relation to today's agenda?
That I'm a member of the GAA and of Conor na Gaeilge and chairman of Nice Cumna Jarrica.
Thank you, Mauricia. Any other members? No. Okay.
The GAA as well, Chair.
Yeah. As am I, a member of the GAA, and yeah, thank you. Okay.
Can I just declare charity trustee, please?
Thank you, Andy. Okay, thanks, members. Clerk or members, are we aware of any apologies?
Nope.
No. Okay. Thank you. Chair's business. Members, just a few items to mention. So there was a reference in this morning's news round around the use of pods for emergency accommodation. Yeah. Very, very worrying. I think it's something that we need to get answers and figures around how often those have been used, how many people are being accommodated, what the situation is with emergency accommodation. So would members be content that we seek further detail around that?
Mm-hmm. It's not just in relation to that, Chair. You know, the pods are one thing, but whether or not emergency accommodation full stop is fit for purpose, whether it's a safe place or adequate to meet the needs of that largely vulnerable individual is a real concern to me. And more recent events in Militia and my constituency points to unsuitable accommodation being used to house people. And there's huge questions here. I appreciate the pressure that the housing executive is under. It's a real serious crisis for us all. But that said, the places where people are being placed needs to be suitable and appropriate to meet their needs and not worsen an already very serious situation for them.
Yep. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. What I would like from the housing executive is a breakdown of what they deem as appropriate temporary accommodation. What does the facility have to have? Because what's next? Tents? You know, what's the next step down from glamping pods? I've had people comment to me about old offices should be used or unused offices should be used. These are people. You know, let's get past the type of accommodation. It's what does the person need? I can think of nothing worse than an 18-year-old sitting in Storm Ashley in a glamping pod without a proper refrigeration, be able to wash their clothes, and it's 4 miles from the nearest place that they can buy food. Let's get the housing executive to clarify what the criteria is to meet temporary accommodation requirements.
Yeah, I think the criteria on the emergency plan, which you've mentioned there, Kelly, as well, in relation to Storm Ashley, wasn't triggered in relation to Storm Ashley. So as part of that, if we could ask, are they reviewing the criteria to ensure that where conditions like that deteriorate, that appropriate action is being taken? Ciara?
I suppose I would concur with everyone, and I suppose the question is the type of non-standard accommodation, that's the terminology that's used for that type of accommodation. So it's basically getting a breakdown of that non-standard accommodation that's currently being used, where it's being used, where is the saturation points across the north, because I know in my own constituency of Foyle, it is at saturation level with the use of non-standard accommodation, and likewise I suppose in West Tyrone as well, given recent incidents. So we need to know that detail, and then we also need to know, and I know there is a task force set up within the housing executive and they meet on a 4-weekly basis on this very issue, to get an update from that task force, particularly in relation to young children. And I know the housing executive trying to prioritise. We've heard from Grania Long basically saying a maximum of 2 weeks. That's what they're trying to achieve. So how are they meeting that target in relation to families with young children in non-standard accommodation for how long and where's the saturation levels across the north, across our constituencies.
Just as a
Briefly,
point
Daniel?
of clarification on from what Kelly has said, Chair, one of the tests, I think, is that these accommodations have to be registered with the Tourism Board, and that's one of the first points that they look at. And in fact, any property owner or accommodation owner or whatever category that fits under could come forward to the Housing Executive and say that they have accommodations available for their use should they need them and require them. So I don't believe there's very much criteria in relation to it. I think we have a bed, it's free for the Housing Executive to use at cost, whatever that may be.
To the Chair,
These are very briefly, please.
just quickly, that it's not just the accommodation per se,
Yeah.
it's the support services that are provided there at the same time when people are located in accommodation, maybe that's far away from where they normally would have resided to the likes of it. What support services are there to ensure that they're integrated within the new community maybe they find themselves in, or how does it they handle the accommodation they're provided with?
Yeah, and just in relation to that, to declare an interest to members, I am working on the private members bill around extending the statutory period when the Housing Executive must intervene on homelessness. So just to declare that relevant to this discussion. So, okay, members, thank you for that. Just to let members know then that I am hoping to attend tonight's Grassroots Football Awards, which are taking place in City Hall as chair of the committee, and hoping to attend that, looking forward to that event. And also to just flag the fact that it's Libraries Week, members, and I suppose libraries play a particular and a very valuable role across all of our communities, and just to flag that up, it's always a great opportunity for people to try for the first time or check out the range of services that our libraries provide, and it's way beyond just borrowing books. There's many other elements. So, okay, thank you for that, members. I'm just going to check with the... Okay, so we'll carry on then with agenda item 3, members, which is the draft minutes. I refer you to the draft minutes from the meeting on the 17th of October, which are page 6 of the meeting pack. Do members have any issues in relation to that? Andy?
Just the declarations of interest don't appear to be on the minutes, Chair, from last week.
Okay, thank you. So, Clerk, could I ask that those be amended?
Yeah, certainly, yeah.
And will we bring them back to the next meeting for...
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll bring them back for approval at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, members, matters arising then. So at page 16, go ahead, Kelly. Oh, it's on matters, yeah.
arising.
Okay. Page 16, members, is a reply from the BBC in relation to committee queries on sign interpreted news services from BBC NI. It states the BBC has specific requirements in respect of sign interpreted, subtitled and audio described programming, and in respect of BBC One, 6.3% of its broadcast hours were sign interpreted against a 5% target. The BBC response says that it doesn't expect that the transfer of its lunchtime news bulletin to non-linear broadcast will significantly impact delivery, but that they're doing the delivery but in a different way. The BBC have said they will fulfil any additional regulatory requirements that may be introduced in respect of its service. The BBC made key stakeholders aware of the change that it was making to BBC Newsline's sign interpreted bulletin each weekday, and have dealt with specific queries from them and others, seeking to explain their approach and to promote awareness of the service availability and to encourage use of that. Do members have any comments? Kelly?
Just on this point, Chair, can we write to the department to ask them, as part of their sign language bill work that they're doing, are they going to include any requirements for visibility of sign language in local broadcast media?
Yep, that's fine. I think I have to say, I found that the idea that they're 1.3% above a pretty, let's be honest, low bar target of 5% is not massively encouraging, in my opinion. I think we need to increase the visibility and the availability of that key communication. And we will obviously be looking at legislation around this issue, around sign as well. So, members, then at page 18, there's a reply from DAERA to committee queries on disability rights and representation. DAERA states that it's committed to engaging with disability groups as it continues to develop its policies, and later this year it will seek their views as part of the public consultation on its revised disability plan, which is under development. DAERA is also represented on the NICS Disability Cross-Departmental Working Group, which is taking forward the Executive Disability Strategy. Do members have any comments in relation to that, or content to note? Content, thank you, members. Moving on, members, to agenda item 5, correspondence. There's a memo at page 21 of the main pack, and there's also a tabled correspondence memo available at page 3 of your tabled pack, members. So any comments or any issues that members wish to note?
Chair, can I ask, on 5.2, the Guardian article, can we find out if Northern Ireland is covered in that investigation?
It doesn't seem to be. It says that it's not. So my point was going to be actually just on the back of this, that we've raised in this committee many times about the carers overpayment. I know yourself, Chair, has, and I have in the chamber as well. It's genuinely very, very worrying. So I would really like to ask the department whether they will engage in their own review. I know that we have had feedback in terms of the department liaising with DWP about the computer system that's used. But given that this is a root and branch review, rather than just looking into a few different issues, I think that this could be really helpful for Northern Ireland as well to conduct their own full review of carers overpayments.
Okay, thank you. Members, there's a letter in there from Jerry Carroll on his bill consultation, and just want to check, do members want to seek a briefing from Jerry now to be
The link
scheduled?
doesn't work. I don't know if anybody else tried.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
I ended up copying and pasting it into the bar because the link directly didn't go,
Okay.
Consultation link to his
Yeah.
consultation.
And members broadly content that we look at scheduling in that briefing? Yeah, thank you. Dan, or Brian, sorry.
Yep, no, I just wanted to speak on the carers allowance as well. I was going to raise that. I mean, one of the quotes there in the article, someone says, I earned £1 too much for 19 weeks, have to pay back all the carers allowance from that time, have to use a credit card, to cope.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very poorly designed scheme. We're all agreed on that. And so just that again, we should be, can just remind me that what was the action on that then?
It was to write about a full root and branch review. I think
to
our department,
yeah.
because this review doesn't cover, because it's devolved, doesn't cover Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
The review that's being done in England and Wales, so it was to ask our department. I think in the past we've also asked for the Minister to write to DWP in terms of the cliff edge nature of carers allowance and whether it can be looked at about like a tapered benefit rather than a cliff edge benefit.
Committee has written several letters
Yeah.
to DWP itself.
Right, so we have written to DWP because it's just, you get the impression that maybe it's only checked at the end of the financial year or something when people's, income tax is worked out and so on, and then if they decide that people have earned too much at some stage, that they're going back. There's just not the proper checks, especially people who are on variable income, and then find they would go over a threshold. Okay.
Okay, thanks for that. Members, Kelly?
I am moving on now to 5.5. The correspondence from the Chair's Liaison Group. Now, I am a chair of a different committee, so I sit on that group, but I wasn't at this meeting, unfortunately. One of the things that has come out of that has been the post-legislative scrutiny piece that Justice are taking forward. I think that something like a PLS tracker would be useful for ourselves, especially if we have the liquor licensing or gambling legislation coming forward in the future. It'd be good to see what was sort of what was in the bill, what has been actioned to date, and I think that that's what that post-legislative scrutiny does. I don't know if that's something that we could have for the committee.
Look at that, bring it back.
It was just a question that I was going to have about this. How do we decide? Do we decide as a committee which pieces of legislation to put that PSL on, or is it all legislation that goes through this committee that would have that tracker or the scrutiny?
Committee would decide as part of its strategic planning where it wants to focus its post-legislative
And
scrutiny.
we decide then in terms of the time frame and how often
Yes.
we do that checking. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, members. Any other issues, members, in terms of correspondence, or are content to note all of that other correspondence? Yep. Okay, thank you, members. So I'm going to check now if we need to take a short break or if we can move to the ministerial briefing, even if we can move to getting people maybe into the room.
I'll just check if they're outside now. Yeah, maybe move into closed, they're obviously not here.
Yeah. So I'll ask the clerk to move us into closed session for a short break just to arrange the ministerial briefing. Thank you.
Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29. Sound.
She confirmed open.
We are confirmed open, members. Okay, members, thank you. And we're moving now to agenda item 6, which is a ministerial briefing from the Minister for Communities, and thank the Minister and his team for attending this morning's session of the committee. Members, you have been provided with a copy of the minutes from the Minister's meeting with the LCC at page 65, and I would now like to welcome to our meeting August Fáilte Rovalig, to Gordon Lyons, Minister, Paddy Rooney, Deputy Secretary, Work and Health, Emer Morelli, who is Deputy Secretary for Engaged Communities, and Cherry, is it? Or
Cherry.
Cherry Arnold, thank you, Cherry, who's Director of Financial Planning, OD and W&H. So, Minister, would you like to please make an brief opening statement, or could we go straight to questions from members, Minister?
I feel if I were to open with a statement, no matter what I would say, I think you would still ask questions anyway. So why don't we go straight to the questions?
Okay, well, thank you, Minister, for that. And Minister, we have discussed there maybe if there are some of the questions that arise that have detailed or elongated answers, maybe we could provide those in writing back to committee. And also potentially, if there are questions that we don't get around to, if you're agreeable, Minister, maybe members can put questions in writing following on from the session. So, Minister, I want to start off with the meeting that you had with the LCC.
Yes.
I appreciate the minutes that are through there, but I would like to ask, why did you choose to engage with the LCC on policy issues which they have no expertise specifically or role in, while refusing to meet with numerous groups, it would appear, who have vast amounts of experience working positively with communities and have a huge track record?
Thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to address this issue, because I believe that there has been a misrepresentation of me and of my position, and I welcome the opportunity just to put some things on the record. At the outset, can I first of all say that I am opposed to all paramilitary activity, violence and criminality. I am not endorsing, I have not endorsed, and I never will endorse any paramilitary activity. I believe that it is as wrong today as it was 50 years ago, as it was 25 years ago, as it was 5 years ago. And I want to make that absolutely clear. Unlike some, I will never seek to justify criminality or terrorism. Unlike some, I will never glorify it. And unlike some, I will never adhere to the notion that there is no alternative to violence, that there is no alternative to setting off bombs and burying people under rubble, that there is no alternative to killing children, no alternative to taking people off a bus, lining them up and shooting them, no alternative to leaving countless children without fathers and mothers. I believe that there has always been an alternative to violence, to paramilitary activity and to criminality. I believe that alternative is seeking to change the society that we live in through peaceful and democratic means. And that's why I met with the LCC. The LCC say that they are representing those within loyalism that want to move away from paramilitary activity and from violence. And that's why I met with them, to show them what can be achieved through politics, to show them the work that I am doing in the department to deal with some of those pressing issues facing communities today. Now, I recognise, I understand, I respect the fact that some people will take a different position to me on that. However, I believe that it is important and that there's a duty on me to support those who are sincere in moving elements away from criminality. That's why I met them. Now, I know that much has been made of the fact that there are other groups that I have not met, and I understand there is concern in relation to that. However, many of the groups that have been mentioned are groups that have had extensive involvement in the development of many of the strategies that you are interested in. These are individuals that have been part of co-design groups, expert advisory panels that have contributed to the work that we are doing in the department, that had a real say in the policy development that we are talking about. So I don't believe that it is right to say that a platform has been given to the LCC which has not been given to others. In fact, others have had a far greater impact and input into the policies of this department and have actually had a say in drafting some of the policies that I will be bringing forward. I have made it clear to these groups that the development of the strategies is nearing its completion, that I will hopefully be in the position soon to bring some of those to the executive, and at that stage it will then be the position that they will go out to consultation, and during that consultation phase they will be given the opportunity to have their say again. I would like to actually bring some of those groups together. So I recognise and understand that some people would like to have had a meeting. I believe that they have had extensive engagement as lobbyists into this process. I am willing to hear from them.
I'll come in because I'm keen to get the members.
No,
I know we are coming back to that issue around the policies. That is another interest. Before we go to members, just final brief one, and you've said there that you're interested in ensuring that the transition takes place, and that's part of the reason for your meeting. The ARC have for a number of years now recommended the adoption of a formal transition process. In your discussion with the LCC, do you feel that they are in support of that recommendation?
Well, that wasn't brought up directly during the meeting. The meeting was almost entirely focused on the issues of deprivation, housing, issues like that, as you will see through the minutes. But certainly I made clear at the start of the meeting about the importance of the democratic process. And that's the way in which we deal with the issues that we face today. And as I said, that has always been my position, Mr. Chairman, and not everybody can say that.
Yeah, you've said that clearly. Okay, I'll go to members now for questions. Brian?
Thank you, Minister, for your attendance today. When I look at the agenda of that meeting, it's a very familiar agenda for me, for meetings that I attend in the Greater Shankill and North Belfast with many groups and concerns within those communities. And I, like you, will continue to work with people to advance these issues and to address community concerns. For clarity, can you clarify when you received the invitation to meet with the LCC, and how many groups have you met during your time as Minister?
Yes, absolutely. I believe that it was on the 1st of March was when I received the invitation. And look, I just want to make a general comment about this, because I have a lot of groups that come to me and they can be frustrated that they're not getting meetings or the length of time it takes to get meetings. And so to answer your second question, I've received 763 invitations to attend meetings or events from a wide range of individuals. Some of those invitations, for example, some of our political colleagues have invited me to different parts of Northern Ireland. They may have 7 or 8 engagements for me to do, but that counts as one invite. So 763 invitations, that's not including the many requests I get from officials to meet with me and talk with them as well. And I have attended or accepted 395 of those.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Daniel?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being with us today. Minister, there is a lot of frustration in relation to the meeting that took place, and you've outlined your reasoning behind it, whether we agree with that or not. But it's 26 years since the Good Friday Agreement. Surely there's no place in our society for the LCC in today's Northern Ireland. Would you agree with that?
I think there's no place for paramilitary activity and paramilitaries in our society today, but I think that there is a role for those organisations that say that they are committed to moving forward and that they are representing those who want to move forward. I think they should actually be encouraged in that, Daniel.
I think 26 years on, organisations like the LCC should be redundant and no longer in existence. Political representation, Minister, is what's needed, and leadership in those communities, and indeed delivery as a consequence. I'm just wondering, Minister, why the LCC was given greater priority than some of the other groups that were turned away. What criteria did they satisfy that you considered them as priority to meet?
Well, first of all, I would make the point in relation to 26 years on. Do you have a deadline for when you think this should have stopped? Is there a time period that you think that it's now no longer a period where we should be trying to assist those? Certainly the legislation doesn't say that. In fact, I took a pledge of office whenever I took up this post, and part of that pledge of office says that I have to support those who are determined to make the transition away from paramilitarism.
Long transition, Minister, with respect to 26 years.
What do you think the deadline is?
There's no place in society today, and there's a lot of people appalled by the fact that you and other colleagues from your party and the executive have prioritised the needs of the LCC over that of other groups that represent the wider interests of our society. And again, I'll put to you, Minister, why did you place those with the LCC with a greater priority than the other groups that you turned away?
So first of all, I don't accept that I have treated them with a greater priority. First of all, because of the engagement that has already taken place and the platform that those other lobby groups have had, whether on the expert advisory panel or through co-design groups. So I certainly don't accept that that is the case. There are, of course, other reasons why some of the other meetings have been declined with different groups. For example, sometimes I will get requests for meetings that are not part of my departmental responsibilities, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to accept. Sometimes I believe that it would be more appropriate for them to meet with officials. Sometimes it's the case that I get invitations to go to certain events at specific times, and that clashes with things that are already in the diary. So I don't accept that I've given greater priority to one over the other, and there are legitimate reasons sometimes why meetings can't take place. And then to go back to your first point about the time frames, I'm happy to hear from you of when you think it was acceptable to help people.
With respect, Chair, the Minister's deflecting. I'm asking you
a
question.
I'm asking you. What do
Minister,
you think?
your officials will come to you and say, Minister, there's a request to meet from the LCC. What consideration did you give to that meeting that satisfied in your mind that it was appropriate to meet with them over other groups? That's what I'm asking you, Minister. That's what I'm asking you. What in your mind made you prioritise that group over others? What criteria did they satisfy you felt was a priority to meet with the LCC over some of the many other groups that you turned down?
Well, I don't think you're listening to what I'm saying.
You haven't answered.
No, I don't think you're listening to what I'm saying. There's different reasons why prioritisation takes place.
I'm asking you what it is in this instance.
In this instance, Mr. McCrossan, the fact is that the group many months ago had asked to meet. I have a duty under the Ministerial pledge to support those who are determined to make the transition away from paramilitary activity. That's why I accepted it, so I could outline to that group what it was what it is that I'm trying to do within this department to deal with the issues that were of concern to them.
Okay, Melissa.
Thank you, Leg. You're all very welcome here today. Minister, in your opening statement, I appreciate the comments that you made in your condemnation, say, of all paramilitary groups and the likes of it, and your commitment to democracy. And I'm old enough to remember that I've had the state been as committed and its armed forces to democracy, then we could have avoided maybe 50 years of our recent past. But notwithstanding that, Minister, if I could go on, and again too in relation to groups that you've met and groups that you haven't met, and in particular one of my main areas of interest is that of the Irish language. Can I ask you, Minister, what have you done in terms of meeting with representatives of the Irish language groups, and in addition, what have you done to promote the strategy in relation to the Irish language?
Look, in relation to your first comment, I don't subscribe to your view. I don't believe there is ever justification for violence, regardless of what you feel the state is doing or what it's not doing that it should do. I don't think that there was ever a justification for violence.
I haven't justified violence one way or the other. That's not the point that I made. The point that I made was that given our recent history, and we all know ourselves how it was that it developed into the situation that it was, I'm not justifying violence one way or the other. in that respect. But that if I can just go on directly to asking you in terms of your strategy that you and your department should be developing in relation to the Irish language, what are you actually doing about that?
Well, I welcome your comments because there should be no justification for violence at any stage, and I welcome the fact that you're not justifying what took place in earlier decades in our history. The development of language strategies falls into the same category as the other social inclusion strategies that I have been attempting to push forward. The language strategies aren't at as an advanced stage, and I wanted to get a clear picture of what it is that we're actually trying to do before I engage with those groups. Now, that does not mean that I have not engaged with representatives of Irish language groups. In fact, I was very pleased to accept an invitation to West Belfast to hear a very interesting talk about the history of the Irish language in West Belfast, and in particular within the Presbyterian Church and the Irish Language Bible. I forget the name of that organisation, but it would be incorrect to say that I haven't engaged and that I haven't received correspondence from others. Look, you'll be aware of the significant amount of work that there is to do in relation to these strategies, the implications that some of these can have as well. I'm committed to working and to bring proposals to the executive to ensure that we can get something that commands support around these issues and following the requirements that I'm bound under the law.
Yeah, Melissa, I'm going to have to move on at that now to give a very brief. I'm going to have to get to other members.
Minister, in relation to Keystone Park, and I know that we have lost that opportunity in terms of hosting a major sporting event. But again, too, can you outline what are you doing to deliver the development of Keystone Park at present?
So in terms of the executive commitment from 2011, that remains, and the funding from the executive of £62.5 million remains as well. The next step is for me to meet with the GAA to update them on the situation. I have got that in the diary. I don't know the exact date. That's taking place in the coming weeks. Next Thursday. That's going to take place next Thursday, so we can discuss the way forward. But certainly the original commitment that was made in terms of the funding remains. But you'll be aware of the vastly different situation that we find ourselves in now in terms of construction, inflation, and the challenges that exist there. But the pledge from the executive remains.
Thank you. And just to remind members, we have agreed that we're going to move through these in a thematic way, kind of around issues. So to remind members of that point, Sian, please.
Thank you.
And then finally, Morris, and as brief as you can, both, please.
Yeah, and thank you, Minister, for coming today. First question is, how do you feel this meeting fits within the department's responsibility for the Action 3 of the Executive Plan for Tackling Paramilitarism and Criminality and Organised Crime, which is your department is responsible for?
So. You'll have to, quote that to me
so
again.
The Action 3 is the executive should work with leading figures and organisations throughout all sections of society to take a stand against criminality, promote responsible cooperation with authorities as a part of a culture of lawfulness.
So your implication by asking the questions is that somehow I've not done that?
No, I'm asking how you feel it fits within that strand.
That's perfectly. As I've outlined today, I have no truck whatsoever with paramilitary activity. I will oppose it at every opportunity, and I hope that everybody else will join me in doing the same. So there's absolutely no contradiction there whatsoever, Sian.
Okay.
No contradiction.
Great. Did you ask or inquire about the groups that the LCC represents and where their role in criminality or any organised crime sits with?
So as I've outlined, the meeting was primarily in regards to deprivation and housing and issues around poverty. But I absolutely made clear during the meeting, as the minutes reflect, that the only way for us to move forward is through democratic and peaceful means.
If
I may interject there. Minister, can I just seek clarification on that? The LCC represent organisations that have threatened housing executive staff and have put people out of their homes, and specifically the UVF and the UDA and Newton Ards have been very active. Did you ask the LCC to ensure that their members stop that type of activity before you would agree to take forward any measures?
Well, look, I don't know, and I'm guessing that you don't either, about the individual members that I met with and what areas of responsibility they have or what influence that they have.
Housing,
but certainly I'm more than happy to say that now, and we'll certainly say that again. I absolutely believe that this sort of thing needs to stop, and I believe there's no place for it within our society whatsoever. And I hope I am being crystal clear on that, because these issues have been conflated. Trying to help people move on from where they're at now does not in any way mean that you're endorsing what some may be doing.
Can I just jump in there, Minister? That's the opposite of what I'm hearing from some of the groups that I've spoken to, is that their assessment is that by you meeting them and by offering them a ministerial audience, it does endorse the activities that some within their membership are involved in. And they have expressed a lot of hurt to me, Minister, about that meeting. They feel that some of those groups are gatekeepers to them receiving funding, to them receiving any kind of leeway within the community. They feel that those members that group represent are actually at the crux of some of the problems that they're trying to address, and they're not getting very far with. What would you say to those organisations that have had hurt caused by this meeting?
Well, I hope that they would hear what it is that I am saying today, and my desire to make sure that we move on as a society and make sure that things like that never happen again, because I believe there's no place for that in our society, and that is certainly not my intention. I want to make sure that we can actually move away from all of these things that you're right, absolutely plagues our society. I, in good faith, engage with those who are saying to me that they want a better future for their communities. I am under a duty after taking the ministerial pledge to support those who are wanting to make the transition away from paramilitarism, and I actually hope that I will encourage people to go down the peaceful and democratic route.
Do you think that it will be successful by giving them this? By giving them an audience at a meeting that you say you didn't challenge them on their criminality or potential links to criminality?
I absolutely made clear about how we need to ensure that we take up peaceful and democratic means. But look, you're here to assist me in the work of my department. How would you say that I support those who are determined to make the transition away from paramilitary activity if I don't meet with them, if I don't engage in any way?
I think that the key here is, Minister, is when you're denying meetings to those who are actually actively on the ground, being blocked by some of the organisations that you're meeting representatives of, that's where the challenge lies. Now, the other thing that I wanted to ask is just, I have the two key issues were the deprivation in particular areas and housing in particular areas. Have any departmental resources, either time or financial, been allotted to those issues that were brought up specifically in that meeting as at the minute? On the back of that meeting, have any specific resources been allotted?
Not that I am aware of, because the meeting was primarily about informing about what I am doing. Obviously, there was conversations around exploring what it is that we might be able to do. But I believe that lots of those actions are already being taken forward by my department. Look, I'm trying to understand your position as well here, Sean, because I've read the news reports and you've said, and the BBC reported this, that your issue seemed to be with the fact that there weren't meetings with other people. I think if I'm quoting from the BBC article correctly, you said if you're meeting with other groups as well, then that would be okay. But the issue seemed to be the fact that it was not meeting with these groups. No, I don't think I
said it was okay.
Right.
I think I actually said if we are going to go down the route of the media comments I made, I said that I had a difficulty with meeting with people who were engaged in active paramilitarism, which the UVF UDA Red Hand Commando seem to still be. So that was where my initial issue was. My second issue is that the likes of, you've already called them lobbyists and had extensive involvement already with past ministers, not with yourself. So the likes of those who have been given the responsibility to co-design with you and with your department have not been met with. So yes, there is an issue there. I think there's two issues for me.
Okay.
We need to get moving on. So
just on that, like, do you believe then there should be no engagement whatsoever? Because I believe there is a duty under that, and in fact, your own party manifesto from 2023. I think you were a council election candidate during that.
I was, yeah.
You said council
Minister,
should...
can I just say this is
council
not
should
Minister.
adopt
I don't think I'm the
Minister,
one that's
excuse me.
under the spotlight here. My
Yeah,
job
Minister.
is to ask you
And
questions,
Sean.
Minister, and I am.
Sean and Minister, excuse me. The purpose of this meeting today, Minister, is for members of this committee to scrutinise your activities, not for you to scrutinise a member. So I would ask you to address Sean's question and move on.
Of course. So I do believe the committee has a role to advise and assist, and I hope that I would be able to ask questions to better understand where people are coming from. But we're talking about this issue of how we ensure that we can move on from our past. And your position has been in the past that council should adopt a protocol for engagement with those associated with paramilitary organisations, and I think it is important that we do try and find a way to deal with this. I recognise people will have different ways in which they might want to do that,
Okay,
but I think that's important.
Final question on this issue, Morris.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try and be brief. Minister, you said you didn't prioritise the meeting with the LCC. Well, considering that they had applied for a meeting in March and it took 6 months for that meeting to take place, would back up your statement. Minister, we live in a very unnatural political landscape. There are dissident Republican groups out there. There are dissident Loyalist groups out there. And each and every one of us, there's an onus on each and every one of us to do what we can to end paramilitarism right across the spectrum. And it's not just paramilitarism, it's criminality, it's drug dealing, it's smuggling, etc., etc. So from my point of view, Minister, I think you did the right thing in meeting anybody that we could possibly channel energy through, that they stop this activity completely. You said earlier that you had 763 invitations and you accepted 395, excluding duplications and meetings where your staff have met people instead, and diary bookings. That to me is quite an achievement for the short space of time this place has been up. Maybe you can elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm delighted to have the opportunity. I think it is important that we do put on record the fact that meetings are taking place with many interested individuals right across the portfolio. I appreciate the words that you've said. I think you're right. We do need to engage with people. We need to engage with people we don't always agree with as well. And it's a duty of mine under the ministerial pledge as well. And I do meet with a wide range of individuals, some who would address issues and have a different worldview from me, but I'm committed to doing everything that I can to meet with those that are interested in the issues that we all care about and actually try and find solutions to those issues.
Okay, Minister, listen,
okay,
we have asked for a full
fine.
list of all the meetings, so I don't want to go in at any. We do need to move on to other issues. Andy, you're just in, please, very briefly. I was about to move on.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions, Minister. Minister, just at the outset to set the context, what's your understanding of the LCC and their role?
My understanding of the LCC and their role is that they were set up by former Downing Street Chief of Staff, Jonathan Powell, to provide a forum for those who represent those within loyalism who want to make the transition away from paramilitary activity and criminality.
Okay, and you would recognise that they're representative of a number of prescribed loyalist organisations, a representative body thereof?
Correct.
Indeed. And in terms of that, would you accept, Minister, and there's a number of areas that you have highlighted that you discussed at the meeting, that there are those directly involved with those organisations that group represents, the LCC, that are either directly using the organisations or the guise of the organisations to wreak havoc and misery on our communities right across Northern Ireland?
Yes, and that is wrong and it shouldn't happen.
Absolutely, unequivocally. So, Minister, from that meeting, can you explain to us how you're better informed of the aims and objectives of the LCC to eradicate that then through the medium of those topics that you discussed?
Well, I feel the meeting was more about me being able to inform them about the work that I am doing in the department to demonstrate how through politics we can actually make a change, and the issues that those communities face in terms of poverty and deprivation and housing. The best way to deal with those is through democratic and peaceful means.
Absolutely, but coming back to the point, Minister, that some of those within those organisations are using those organisations directly or the guise of those organisations to prey on communities through the poverty, through dereliction, through housing. So I would want to better understand as the aims and objectives to eradicate that and prevent that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And what I think that we need to do, and one of the steps in tackling the control that paramilitaries can have over communities, is making sure that people have a better start in life, that we provide the educational opportunities for them, that we provide the employment opportunities, that we have housing for them, and make sure that they find themselves in a position where they're not as susceptible to some of those.
Okay, we are going to have to move on, Minister. I want to just ask you, just clearly, because it's come up, did you actually ask in the meeting them to end their criminality?
Well, I've made it clear that I have said that the only way forward is through, through peaceful and so did I use those words directly? No, I did not. I'm happy to do that now, but I think I'm being very clear when I say that the only way forward is through peaceful and democratic means, that therefore there is no room for paramilitary activity in our society. Mr. Chairman, that's something that I have always believed. And not everyone around this table can say the same.
Thank you. We need to move on to the issue of housing. We have huge issues around housing. We need to move the meeting on to that issue. So, Minister, as Minister responsible, and I listened to your remarks in the Chamber the other day in relation to the adjournment debate and around the numbers of housing, and you'd stated 2,000 built under Deirdre Hargey, 1,500 the following year, down to 4 to 600 this year. What exact plans have you in place at the minute to improve the amount of social houses that are being built, and what monies have you bid for from the executive for that?
So there are a number of things that I am doing and will be doing in order to improve the situation that we face in terms of housing. First of all, let me make it clear, we don't have enough social housing in Northern Ireland. And I noticed how you invoked the name of the former minister. This doesn't come down to ministerial priorities, this comes down to money. And we are in a much worse situation now than we were just a few years ago. I have bid for the funding to put our housing where it needs to be in terms of our targets. We have fallen short of that. I haven't got the money from the Finance Minister that I would otherwise have liked to have had.
How much did you bid for?
Sarah, you can give me the exact figures.
Our October monitoring round returns is due on Friday, and we'll be bidding for over 50 million. That would deliver the 2,000 houses this year if received.
Okay, thank you. Go on ahead, Minister.
So we are within a constrained budgetary environment. We are bidding for everything that we can get to meet our targets. But I recognise that in everything that I'm doing in the department, we can't just do things the way we've always done them before. So I'm really proud of what it is that we have pushed forward in regards to housing at this time. So I've brought forward, and all of these issues, yes, we need more social housing, but all of the other things that we do can impact on that as well. So in terms of intermediate rent, that's a product that's now coming through, and we look forward to being able to do an announcement on the provider of that soon. More financial transactions capital for move on accommodation. We've increased the property value limit for co-ownership. We've progressed the private rented sector regs. We've provided additional funding for the Supporting People programme. We're working with the housing associations on void properties. For the first time, I have secured what many have been asking for a long time, a standalone housing commitment in the programme for government, and we are bringing forward a housing supply strategy so that we have a joined up cross-departmental approach for the first time. The most important thing of all will be the revitalisation of the housing executive and clarification on the powers that we have there. That is an issue that I have raised at every opportunity with every UK government minister that I have met, and I have met many, as well as pushing this issue just the day before yesterday with the new chair of the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee. That confirmation of that borrowing power ability can transform what we do. So I'm doing everything that I can to push this forward.
Yeah, and we certainly look forward as a committee to seeing that housing supply strategy published. Final one from me before I go to members. Will you, in the current circumstances, rethink your opposition to the right to buy scheme, given that we are unable to replace social homes, and we're selling actually at the minute more homes than are planned to be built or budgeted to be built this year? And will you consider using a moratorium to ensure that stock remains within the social housing?
So the first thing that I want to do is make sure that we can build more social homes. I'm not minded to change the policy in terms of the ability to buy your own home. I think there could be some changes that could be made in relation to who would be eligible for that. That can be looked at, but no, I have no intention to change that right now. Those are people that will otherwise need homes elsewhere. The real issue is making sure that we actually build more homes, social and others.
Okay, so I'm going to our Deputy Chair then, Ciara, and then I'm coming to Kelly.
Can I thank the Minister and the team for coming here today? And obviously housing is a key issue within the Department for Communities, and we all very much welcome that it's now included within the programme for government moving forward. We also are aware of the dire need, of the current need, where we have over 88,000 people on the social housing waiting list, with 58,000 of those in full duty applicant, and 33% under the age of 18. So that is a dire situation, and we hear on a daily basis of the key issues regarding a crisis in relation to temporary accommodation and the use of non-standard accommodation, and particularly in my own constituency of Foyle, where it's at saturation point, where there isn't even any more non-standard accommodation available for those temporary homeless. So I would like to just see clarity on, will the housing supply strategy be with the executive by the end of the month? And if so, since it was originally designed in the last mandate, is there any significant changes to the housing supply strategy over the last year?
So today's the 24th of October. Did you say by the end of this month or next?
Yes, this month.
This month. No, it'll not be there before the end of this month. I'd hope that it would. I don't just throw documents down in front of executive colleagues and tell them to support it. That's not the way that I do business. I want to try and make sure that we get everybody on board. To that end, I've been meeting with other ministers in relation to the strategy, because I want them to give their views. I want them to get on board so that when this goes to the executive, we've something we can all get behind. I have 2 outstanding meetings with ministers. I want to do those meetings, but I have a housing supply strategy which I believe covers everything that needs to be covered and can help us to start making a real difference. Of course, it has been updated and refreshed from previous versions. There have been, last week, actually I was making a number of additions and revisions to it to make sure that it reflects additional comments that we have received and the new environment in which we are in. So absolutely there have been changes to it, but I am at the stage now where if I can have those meetings with those 2 ministers immediately after, I hope to be able to bring that to the executive.
Can you provide any insight into what changes have been made?
Some of them have just been around the different emphases. Some of it have been taking account of the fact that there have been changes made in terms of some of the new initiatives that I have brought forward. So intermediate rent new, the financial transactions capital, some of the other discussions that we have had with the housing executive about what is possible. But overall, the aim of the strategy is to make sure that departments are working together to make it easier to build houses so that we can increase that supply. I think that there will be a significant amount of work to do whenever it comes to the action plan that will follow on from this, because there is a significant amount of work to do, in particular around planning and wastewater. I want to make sure that we have policies in place that will actually make a difference. We need to ensure, for example, that those statutory consultees in the planning process are actually responding quickly so that we can move it on as quickly as possible. So there will be changes, but look, I hope all will be revealed very, very soon.
Just in relation to the intermediate rent model, which wasn't new because it's in the original draft housing supply strategy, can you just clarify for me, is it a pilot with regards to certain constituencies, or, and I know obviously maybe for legal reasons you can't divulge who you're in, but a timeline, is it across the north and will it target housing need, or is it specific to particular constituencies, the original tender brief?
On that, when I say it's been updated, obviously when the original draft, we hadn't got to the stage that we're at now with intermediate rent, for example, so that's why. Those decisions haven't been made yet in relation to location, etc. And there'll be a number of issues that you would need to take into consideration, because there's some areas that intermediate rent probably wouldn't work as well, maybe because the need isn't higher. So it hasn't been decided yet where that will be. There have been no constituencies that have been singled out, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
just one more in relation to, you're well aware of the critical importance of our homeless support organisations and providing a wraparound support, particularly for our most vulnerable who are currently in temporary accommodation. So given that the situation, you're aware that they're currently being funded on a monthly basis. Some was given a job notice because of the lack of available funding. What for you as Minister or the department can do to reassure those currently working in that sector that they will be supported to provide the most essential service for our most vulnerable currently who are homeless?
Absolutely essential. Here's my problem. We're spending far too much money on temporary accommodation, and where we should be spending that is on prevention instead, and helping those that find themselves in that position, so that we can do everything that we can to make sure that homelessness is brief, rare and non-recurrent. I want to pull that money to the front because you will save more in the longer term, but most importantly you'll actually provide better outcomes for people, and that's surely what we're here to do. So that's where my focus is on. We're in an exceptionally constrained budgetary position, but that's why we need to build more homes ultimately in the long term, so that we take the pressure off the temporary accommodation and then can put that into prevention.
Is there any key action but being done? For instance, has there been a bid in to get additional funding for our frontline homeless support organisations?
It is absolutely the case that we're looking for additional funding for homelessness overall, but we are trying to be as innovative as possible on this to see what it is that we can do. For example, I spoke with the housing associations and said, can you please check your void properties again? What is it that you can have? What can we use? What other accommodation is out there? And Kelly rightly raised the horrendous issue of the number of people in hotel and B&B accommodation, and the awful situation now of having to use glamping pods as well, although they are fit for purpose, but none of this is right overall. I want to see more money going in to that prevention instead. That's where my emphasis is.
Okay, so we have 5 members indicating, so I've asked members to be really succinct in their questions, and Minister as well if possible, as brief as possible. Go ahead, Kelly.
Minister, thank you very much for coming along. I think we share our frustrations with regards to the housing situation, and I would like to thank you for reading the Alliance Party manifesto. It's good to see that you're maybe learning from us. Minister,
tells me what not to do, Kelly.
Well, to be honest, there's a few things you shouldn't do. We're in month 7 of the 2024-25 financial year. When do you think we can expect confirmation of the housing association grant and the total cost indicator rates for this year? Because we're running out of time to enable new build social housing schemes to commence construction, because I actually have a fear that the 500 or 600 houses can't be started unless this is sorted out.
Number of issues raised there. I don't have the exact detail. I'm happy to come back to the member directly. Is that okay?
It would be good to get clarification on how many houses can actually get started this year if that isn't sorted out. If the level of housing association grant is to be reduced towards the cost of building new social housing, this means more private finance will be required, thus the need for many social rents to increase. Has this been factored into the local housing allowance?
Well, obviously the housing allowance can cover some of that. That's why, when we see some of the increase in the rents that take place, I can't remember the exact figure, but I don't know if you know, Chair, the vast majority of, don't have it to hand, but the vast majority of that is covered by the housing allowance. So there's actually a minimal impact. Those additional rents have a minimal impact on tenants.
Okay, so councils across England and I'm saying now that the local housing allowance is appalling and it needs to be reviewed. And I know in the past that people have said, oh no, it's not a devolved issue. Actually, it is. So let's look at this. And I'm saying to you as a member of this committee, we have people who are living in poverty because the local housing allowance isn't high enough. And I'm asking that is taken into consideration, given the fact that all rents are appalling. Minister, then the Supporting People programme, thankfully, thank you, received an overdue increase in funding of 6.4% this year, which was 4.8 million. Can you confirm if this will be recurrent funding, and can we expect an increase for 25-26 as many providers are struggling to maintain sufficient salary levels for staff, as funding for several years has struggled to keep pace with inflation? And we heard from frontline workers that they hadn't had actually a pay increase in 10 years. Those frontline workers are the people who are helping as that part of that prevention for homelessness.
Look, absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why I increased the Supporting People programme. Long before I came into this role, I've seen the excellent work that has been done through that programme. Yes, absolutely, we have bid for that again, for that additional resource to keep that going. That's what I want to see happen. Hopefully people will understand my commitment to that, and I will certainly work with the budget that I have to make sure that we do support these, because in supporting the Supporting People programme and the money that we put in there, I know that we are saving much more money later on, mostly for other departments, but also takes pressure off us as well. So it is a wise investment. And I said the first day that I met with you as a committee, we need to spend our money wisely, and the Supporting People programme is a very wise use of resource.
Thank you. Brian, please.
Thank you, Chair. And Minister, you've reiterated your commitment to bring about borrowing powers for the Housing Executive to enable it to develop social housing at scale. What is the pathway to bringing that about? Will it require, can it be achieved through legislation here at Stormont, or does it require legislation at Westminster level? And what progress has been made in this regard?
No, essentially, what we believe is we only need the Treasury to give that confirmation that what we are trying to do is allowed, because it's what happens in other jurisdictions in England and Wales and Scotland in terms of what their local councils can do. We want to be treated in the same way. We don't believe that's going to require major change or reform. So that is something which I believe can be done very quickly. I do not want that to be part of the wider fiscal framework negotiations that could take a year or more to arrange. I want that to be agreed now. It will not come at any cost to the UK government, and it will allow us to make major changes. I've said many times there are not many real game changers in politics, but I believe that this is something that can make a substantial difference. We can build more homes, we can maintain the homes that we have. I raise it at every opportunity with every UK government minister, and I hope that that can be progressed really, really quickly, because I believe that it is something that can make a difference. And to that end, I have asked the Housing Executive to make sure that they are ready, so that when we do get that confirmation, that we're not waiting around thinking, right, what do we do now? We need to be ready to go. And I'm pleased to have a really good working relationship with Grania and Nicole in the Housing Executive, and they agree with that, and they are progressing that work so that we are ready.
Can I just come in on that as well, Minister? Thank you for bringing this point up. I'm a bit concerned about the movement going forward, that there will be a conflict of interest for the Housing Executive, because currently they decide where social housing can be built. Will you ensure that that conflict of interest is dealt with and there's absolute independence, separation of that decision making?
I don't see that being an issue, but yeah, I'm certainly happy to engage and make sure that there is no perceived issue there.
Just they've turned down Rural Housing Association from building houses in an area where they say there's no need. To be honest, we've 88,000 people needing houses. You build anywhere, it'll be filled. Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Daniel.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for taking these questions. Minister, in your view, what's the biggest blockage to the development of housing in Northern Ireland? We're very well aware of the issues around infrastructure. You've named wastewater infrastructure, sewage facilities as a hurdle. But what conversations have you had with the Minister for Infrastructure and indeed your other colleagues at the Executive in relation to resolving that problem? Because indeed that is the first hurdle, and if we can't get past that, we can't do very much.
I don't think there's any one issue. I think there's a multitude of issues which are holding back the additional supply of housing in Northern Ireland. That's why I'm bringing forward a housing supply strategy, because it recognises all of the different issues that are at play and how we can begin to tackle them. But I absolutely agree there are two issues that stand out certainly from an infrastructure point of view, but we have wastewater capacity and we have the planning system. I have heard it when I was in the Department for the Economy from investors about the slowness at times of our planning system, I believe that we need to have a much more efficient system. I believe that statutory consultees have a major role to play. I think we need to make sure that people understand what's required of them before they put in applications, how we can get that to move as quickly as possible. I think we do have a significant issue with wastewater infrastructure, but we also have many areas in Northern Ireland where there are not capacity issues, and we should be looking at those areas because, as Kelly has said, there are areas right across Northern Ireland where we actually need to make sure that we have homes. So let's make sure that we're doing what we can to build in those areas. But in short, there's no one single answer to this, Daniel. There's a multitude of issues, but absolutely planning and wastewater infrastructure are important.
I appreciate that, Minister. As you'll be aware as well, like many of us around this table, this isn't a new issue. It's been a major problem. Do you accept that the Department and in turn the Executive have failed when it comes to housing and failed to recognise that this is a serious crisis that is affecting people in a very serious way? There's nothing worse actually in our society than someone not having a home of their own or living in homelessness without any idea of where they're going to stay that night.
No, I absolutely believe that this is a serious issue. I have said many times that I believe housing is one of the fundamental building blocks that we need for our people to thrive and succeed. But no, I don't believe it's the case at all that I don't understand or recognise the seriousness of this situation, because it has been one of my top priorities since coming in to office. When you look at all of the action that I've taken, whether it's finally the progression of intermediate rent, the FTC for move on accommodation, increasing co-ownership limit, putting together the housing supply strategy, working to make sure, and at every opportunity I've tried to move forward with the housing executive revitalisation. I'm doing everything that I can. I'm exploring every avenue, taking every opportunity to see what it is that we can do to fix this issue. You asked directly, have I met with the Minister for Infrastructure? I have. That was part of my engagement, and the need to do that. So I don't think that I'm leaving any stone unturned here when it comes to exploring all options to make it easier for us to build houses in Northern Ireland and make use of the properties that we have at the minute as well.
I appreciate, Minister, you outlining your prioritisation of this critical issue, and I think everybody around this table gets that it is a very serious issue. But on the ground, the pace at which things move here has been felt acutely, actually, and people are suffering each and every single day. Have you, Minister, visited some of these temporary accommodations that many of our people are having to live in? I know what you said. Did you say that glamping pods are okay for people to stay in? I missed that at the start.
No, I'm quoting what the housing executive said, that they believe that they meet the requirements that they have. But here's the thing, I don't believe any temporary accommodation is acceptable. I do not believe it is acceptable for someone to be in a hotel or in a bed and breakfast. That is horrendous for people. It's often far from their homes, even worse for children, far from their schools as well. None of this is acceptable. None of this is right. And that's why I have spent so much time trying to do what we can to sort out this situation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Melissa?
Minister, again, I think we're all probably aware, especially in the private rented sector, that there are many people living in substandard accommodation, and there's this continued lack of regulation in relation to some landlords and letting agents. So can I ask you, Minister, is your department looking at this issue and following on the work, we'll say, of the previous Minister in terms of the Private Tenancy Act? Has that been developed at the present time?
Yes, it absolutely is, and we are taking forward the recommendations from that Act. Some of those have been implemented already. There are others that we are taking forward. I want to do everything that I can to make sure that people are living in safe, warm, secure and affordable homes. That includes the private rented sector. It's right that there is appropriate regulation there as well to protect those that are renting, often, by the way, at exceptionally high rents as well. And we are continuing to take that work forward. For example, in some of the electrical safety and carbon monoxide alarm issues, for example, and other things that need to be done, and that will be reviewed as well to make sure that we're not missing out on anything.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, Andy, go ahead, Andy, please.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, can I come back to the status of the housing executive? And you'd obviously mentioned on numerous occasions around wanting to take the change forward quickly. Can you maybe advise when you first sought that change in terms of the borrowing ability for the housing executive?
I don't have the dates when I first had raised this issue. I know that it's something that I wanted to progress very early during my time. It would have been in the first few weeks, I think, that I wrote to the Finance Minister, who technically takes the lead on Treasury-related negotiations. But I can say that I have raised this with Northern Ireland Office Ministers, with the Department of Housing and Local Government, with, as I've said, the Chair of the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee. Many times I've raised this issue.
Yeah, and I appreciate obviously the process in order for you to raise that, Minister, but I would certainly, under my definition, not class that as quickly, and that's not me having a swipe at yourself. So what I would ask is, can you maybe enlighten us as to what the issue is around taking this forward? And secondly, is there anything we as a committee can do in our role to support and assist you to try to move that forward?
Well, absolutely. I'd really appreciate it if you would write to the Finance Minister and ask for this to be top of the agenda. I know that the Deputy First Minister, Emma Little-Pengelly, raised this in her meeting with the Chancellor a number of weeks ago. Look, all I can do is raise the issue. I don't think anybody, knowing what I've done on this issue, can say that I've taken the foot off the pedal in any way. With every week that passes, we're losing opportunities to build more homes. It's a fairly straightforward way of dealing with this quickly. So
no, absolutely.
I've been on the ball on this one, Andy. I've been pushing it as much as I can. The Finance is directly engaging with the Treasury on that. I raised this at the Executive. I believe that the Executive were very warm towards this. So I'm doing everything that I can. I'd certainly welcome your help in that.
Indeed, and I don't think anybody's suggesting. I don't think anybody's suggesting you haven't been working proactively on that. But what I was hoping to seek is what your understanding, because I'm sure you are receiving feedback as to the blockade or the reason that it hasn't been taken forward. Because clearly you see this as a key strand in your wider plan, and also maybe your sort of understanding as to the preparedness of the housing executive to make sure that they're ready to go, because again you see this as key to your plan.
Well, I fear that there may have been an attempt to try and leave this issue to later fiscal framework discussions, to put it in with those other issues. I don't believe that this does relate to a wider funding piece for Northern Ireland. I believe that this is something that should be driven.
Who was hoping to leave that, Minister?
Sorry,
Treasury or from this side?
No, well, I'm not sure. I think that was a potential line for some people, that they might have wanted to do that. I don't believe that's coming from the Finance Minister, and I hope that can be progressed and that people recognise how important this is, how it benefits Treasury. It doesn't cost Treasury anything, but actually helps us building more homes, having more secure places for people to live, helps with all of the other issues that we face.
And just finally, this is the last point, in terms of how quickly can the Housing Executive move if you have this change then?
Very quickly. I have asked them to make sure that they're ready to go on day one and move forward as quickly as possible.
How many units are we likely to see off the back of that?
I can't give you those figures, but I have full confidence in Grania and her team that they will progress this.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, Minister, moving on then to the anti-poverty strategy and the inclusion strategies. What is the date when which we will see the anti-poverty strategy brought to the Executive?
Well, this will be an executive strategy, so I need to wait until I get approval from the Executive. I have now got set up the interdepartmental working group, so that is now meeting to discuss the different actions that are in there so that we're ready to go with that. I believe that the work that they're doing will be completed in December time, so I hope to be in a position early January to take this to the Executive.
Okay. It was, we know, largely drafted before it came into office. Have there been any significant changes to the original draft?
Yes, there has been. We have to take account of what it is that we can actually do. Look, I have no interest in putting forward a strategy that has a pile of demands and asks that we're simply not going to be able to afford. So I believe what we have is a realistic strategy that deals with the core issues to tackling poverty, and I think that's what we now have within this.
Okay, I'm going to go to members. So Kelly.
Minister, you just said something there that has me a bit concerned. You said a strategy. There are a number of strategies, and there's also a number of other departments that have to fulfil the outcomes of those strategies. Will these strategies be brought forward in time for the planning for the next possible 2-year budget coming forward? Because I have a lot of concerns that people with disabilities in particular will be left behind yet again if we don't have these strategies published to influence the planning budget, the budget coming forward for all departments.
Well, look, my goal is to bring this forward as soon as possible. I believe that I can send this to the executive in January and get that agreement very soon thereafter. Where that falls into budgets, yes, I think for the next budget round it'll be in and around that time, but it will be up to the executive to decide whether they accept this and whether they're prepared to fund it.
Has the Department of Finance not already asked the departments to give an outline of what their potential needs will be for the 2 years?
We have done, yes, and we've fed that through.
I'm just worried that the strategies then will miss that timeline because they won't have factored some of the requirements.
There's a further opportunity for us to revise the requirements for the next 2 years.
And will you, because it's your strategies, will you be asking the departments to review theirs in light of the strategies?
Well, it will be an executive strategy.
Yeah.
So yes, if they're agreeing to this, we would expect that would be funded as well.
So they'll update their budgets then in line. You expect that to happen?
Well,
it's a key ask of the interdepartmental group, and that's why we've spent this time investing in the cross-departmental working to ensure that the objectives in the strategy are aligned with the other departments' objectives too, and that there is an understanding of everybody's contribution to the strategy. And yes, we are very mindful of the dates for the next budget round.
Thank you. And Deputy Chair.
Yeah, just one specific question. I'm a bit alarmed that you says there's a number of changes. I can understand you want to create a realistic plan moving forward, given budgetary constraints. So on that, and given that there's a number of changes, I am still very concerned about the lack maybe of re-engagement with members of the co-design group. I think it's critically important that they are engaged with prior to any finalisation of the plan, and I'm absolutely delighted to hear that finally we have a date, which is January. So just on that, will there be a re-engagement with the co-design group and that have invested a lot of time and energy and are very keen to remain involved and engaged and not only getting it published but implemented, because they're going to be key stakeholders working with all the government departments and driving this forward. So will there be any re-engagement prior to January with the co-design group?
There absolutely will be a consultation in relation to this, and they will have their opportunity to have their say as well. I have no objection. In fact, I would say I would intend to bring the group together again to update them on progress.
Minister, if I may, I think it's important too that the lessons we've learned through the process, that other groups outside the co-design group are also given an opportunity. So the trade union side, the churches, the voice of people living in poverty. I think we heard very, very strongly on the back of the Child Poverty Public Accounts Committee hearing, that the voices have to be heard of everyone affected. So as well as the co-design group, which the interdepartmental group is building on, we need to widen that wider audience too.
Can we take that as a commitment, Minister, that you will meet with the co-design group?
Yeah, absolutely. I've no issue with that. No.
Appreciate that. Brian?
Thank you, Chair. And Minister, I know you will be aware of the importance of groups, both voluntary and statutory, providing support for people into employment, particularly those people who need that extra support who are in a general category sometimes called economically inactive for a number of circumstances. Many of those voluntary sector groups currently relying on the shared prosperity funding, and previously who had European Social Fund, and that is currently ending at the end of this financial year. I know this is an issue that you're aware of. What is the latest position regarding lobbying at Westminster level for an extension to what was previously called shared prosperity funding, whether that will be its name going forward.
Look, I don't have a confirmation on this for you, but I did meet with Alex Norris, MP, in relation to this issue, and nothing was given away. But I think it's fair to say that they recognise the uncertainty that exists. That's certainly something that I emphasised with the Minister about how so many of these groups are always waiting, always anxious, always wanting to know what's going to happen next. So I said the most important thing that they can do is provide some sort of certainty to allow them to move forward. So that's certainly something that I emphasised in my meeting with them, and I believe that has been listened to, and I hope we'll get an announcement very soon because, as you rightly say, the clock is ticking.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll have to be really brief now, members. I'm very conscious of time, Andy, and then I'm going to Sean very briefly. Andy.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, can you maybe provide an update on the fuel poverty strategy as well, and how that's aligning with the anti-poverty strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the two are clearly very closely linked. There's good progress has been made on that. A lot of work has been done. I have emphasised the need for us to address this issue because it's a massive part of dealing with poverty overall, especially when you consider how much some of our people have to spend on fuel. So there was an intensive stakeholder engagement process in relation to this, and there is a 12-week public consultation that will launch at the end of next month.
Thanks, Minister. And then finally, in terms of the commentary around this, I haven't heard anything new. So can you maybe give us an insight? And I appreciate, obviously, the anti-poverty strategy has to go for executive sign-off, but we've heard quite often, and when your Permanent Secretary was here previously, about the need to tackle root causes of poverty. Can you give us an indication as to how you intend to do that?
How we intend to tackle the root causes of poverty? Well, I think that it's about making sure, first of all, that people have more homes, for example, I think, or have a home. We need to make sure that we have good housing, we need to make sure that we have good education. But I think one of the core things within the anti-poverty strategy will be around work. Because if we really want to tackle poverty, we need to make sure that people have work, have employment routes to those that face barriers to employment. It's important that we help them to overcome those barriers, and that's going to be at the core of lifting people up out of poverty. We are one of the poorest regions of the UK, and we are. You only have to look at our economic inactivity rate, and there's a correlation there. So that's how we address this issue.
And just finally, as the lead department, obviously you're at the fore of this, how are you ensuring that your executive colleagues are leading from the front as well in driving forward the anti-poverty strategy and the fuel poverty strategy? Because obviously it doesn't just sit with you, it cuts across all departments, and we need them to be putting their shoulder to the wheel as well.
Well, look, I think that's why we set up the interdepartmental working group to ensure that we get everybody bought in there as well. Mr. Chairman, I know you're worried about time here. I know my time is up. I'm happy to give another 10 minutes if that would be helpful.
That's appreciated. Thank you. And that does help. So, okay, Andy?
Just finally, just on that, the
interdepartmental
working group, do you think that needs just on that?
Trevor McDonald, didn't you?
Yes, quickly, Andy.
Do you think that needs to be maybe put on a statutory footing in terms of beyond just that interdepartmental working group, in terms of obligations that departments have, outcomes that they need to achieve?
I think it's going to be an all-executive strategy, and by signing up to the strategy, departments are essentially taking that on. I hope that will be enough. Like, what you could do is bring in an act and put in certain requirements in law, but then what's the penalty if they're not going to meet that? I think I would rather be in a position where I'm wanting people to try and achieve this, and I think that's the best way to do it, rather than to put something in law which they may not, if they can't even meet, if they can just say don't have the resources, don't have the time, don't have the people to do that.
Thanks, Minister. I could go on, but I'll probably go get Sharon.
Did you cut, Andy? I have no doubt. Sean, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just a couple then. In terms of the welfare support mitigations,
yes.
Is there an update on that? We have a date for January for the anti-poverty strategy. Is there a timeline for the other social strategies? Are there any dates set for those? And then finally, how will this committee scrutinise the work of other departments? Will they, in terms of those executive-led those executive strategies that are led by your department, will they be feeding back into you, and will that be something that'll be fed back into this committee?
Andy, that's how you do it. You ask all your questions at once. And,
no one finally.
Get them in,
then you can pick what one you want the answer.
Exactly.
Right, then I'll come back.
Exactly. Your questions. No, there isn't really, I suppose, a rule for this committee to scrutinise the role of other committees. This will be an executive strategy of which we will be the lead department. I'm more than happy to take questions and do what I can in relation to my own department if there are particular issues. I know there's the possibility of having concurrent committees. That could also be an option there as well. In terms of the other strategies, I intend to write to the executive shortly to outline what it is that we can do in relation to gender equality and sexual orientation strategy. In terms of the disability and work strategy, we're currently holding roundtable discussions with action owners and stakeholders, including the disability sector, to agree a final draft by December, I believe. You'd one other question, Sian?
The welfare supplementary.
Yes, okay. So on those, we're talking about two different pieces of work. There's the independent review. I have now got that information. I'll be sending that to the executive imminently. I obviously wanted to go to them first, but I would just prepare you by saying that those additional mitigations come into, well, significant sums of money, and we would need to have a very serious conversation about what is actually possible there. In terms of the other mitigations, you can maybe help us out here a little bit in terms of the timeline.
Yeah, so the current review of the welfare mitigations. So Minister's committed to bring that to the Assembly by the end of December. Report has just been finalised, and we're just going through that at present, and the intention will be to bring that to the Executive within the next number of weeks as well.
Thanks, Paddy. And then what about the Cliff Edge on the 31st of March?
So
where are we with the process of
that review is looking at all of those current welfare mitigations, and if anything needs to be done, any changes need to be done, then the legislation needs to be taken forward in January to avoid the Cliff Edge in March. So the timeline that we currently have in terms of executive paper going to the Assembly by the end of December will enable that to happen, so that there is no cliff edge in March.
How long are you planning the consultation then on any changes?
So
for January, if you're talking about
the welfare mitigations review consultation, the statutory review doesn't commit us to do a public consultation, but we did. We engaged with key stakeholders at early September. We ran a survey during August and September. We've now got all of those replies, and we've collated those responses, and they are now part of the report that Minister will have to take forward. So there will be no further public consultation on that particular review.
Okay, we'll probably come back to that maybe, but Daniel, really briefly, please, you come in quite late, so go ahead.
Minister, you've really outlined, as we all know, that your department is the lead department when it comes to the anti-poverty strategy, and can be quite good or not so good in some instances of producing these strategies, but has there been any conversations at the executive table about how this is actually going to be funded and paid for, because it's going to be cross-cutting, cross-departmental, it's going to affect every aspect of the executive. Has there been any conversation about how it's going to be funded so we can actually see it implemented as intended when we see it?
Not at the executive, because the strategy hasn't been brought to the executive yet, but there is their interdepartmental working group, and that's the purpose of that group, is to make sure that departments know what would be required of them, to see what issues there are, to see what's achievable and deliverable.
The big concern or the risk to the strategy's implementation is if there isn't any cross-departmental availability of the funding. So the strategy could be brilliant, but the implementation slow and protracted because there's no agreement at the table. Do you feel that's a risk or something you'd be concerned about? It's actually one of the biggest criticisms of the executive is the silo working of departments.
So potentially that is an issue, which is why I'm getting everybody together again. I don't take this approach of just throwing something down on the table and expecting my executive colleagues to support it. I want to make sure that we actually have support and buy-in beforehand. Before I take a final paper to the executive, the departments know what would be required of them. There are a few more important things that we will do that can actually make real difference to people. Here, I want people bought in. I want people signed up to this. I want them to understand the change that we can actually make if this is done properly. And I see no merit whatsoever in bringing an ambitious anti-poverty strategy to the table only for it to be signed off and then sit on a shelf. That's not what I'm interested in doing. We have waited 26 years. I am the first minister that will bring this forward, and I'm determined to make sure it's one that will actually be funded and make a difference.
Okay, thank you. Really brief, Melissa, please.
Very quickly, Minister, have you considered any other funding, capital or otherwise, to other sports, including athletics and boxing, and inclusive as well too? Have you given any other consideration to the rate support grant and increasing it to the regional councils?
Well, in terms of the rate support grant, that is something that we've had to make difficult decisions over simply because of the funding that is available to me. In terms of sports funding, I wish that I was in a position to do so much more, because we have a huge need out there, especially on the capital budget in terms of some of the sport. I've engaged with many sporting organisations, all who feel that with a little bit more help they could achieve so much more. I believe in the power of sport. It helps people, it helps bring people together, but it helps with their educational attainment, it helps with their health. I'll certainly be doing everything that I can to look at new ways of bringing in investment and support. It's one of the reasons why I was in the United States meeting with investors at DC United, trying to highlight the importance of sport and what we might be able to do in Northern Ireland. So you have no issue with me there. We're on the same page in terms of wanting to make sure we get more funding into sport.
Okay. Thank you. Brian, real quickly.
Well, I was going to ask you, you've touched on it there, Minister, you were recently in North America. What were the aims, or what benefits do you think would have arisen, or opportunities from that, if that's okay, Chair?
Briefly, if you can, Minister.
If we have the time, because I have to say it was a very successful trip. And I think we've got a number of really tangible benefits and outcomes that come from that. I'm happy to share with you some of the events that I was at. I've obviously...
Well, Minister, we've actually asked for that in writing already. I think it would be more useful if we could get that in writing, just in terms of time purposes.
No, just in terms of outcomes then.
Key priorities, yes, in terms of your department.
Excellent meeting at DC United. I spoke at an investment seminar with a number of investors in sport, and I believe I've secured 3 visits from different people in investment that want to come to see what we can do in Northern Ireland. I met with the Harkin Institute and have developed relationships with them and with Microsoft in terms of some of the disability work that they do. Met with the US Department for Labour, and I think we're building up a good relationship there as well. I wanted to emphasise the importance of the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and to that end we've got a programme of events lined up with the National Archives of the United States, with the Library of Congress, and I met with the Executive Director of the 250th Commission, and very interested in the Northern Ireland links that exist there as well. Some good engagement with the Smithsonian Institution. I was also able to meet in Toronto with some people that are involved in the arts, and I've had some really interesting conversations about how they have leveraged private sector involvement and philanthropy in the arts as well, and I think that that's really important, because the funding that we have for the arts, as Shan will know, is just simply not enough. I have been working to see about the alternatives, and I think we've got some good ideas coming from that. And finally, I do want to emphasise the importance of Grace Hill. Grace Hill, again, Shan will know, being in her constituency, listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We know that the Giant's Causeway has that. We now have Grace Hill as well. That has huge potential for that area and for Northern Ireland as a whole. And I would encourage the committee, Mr. Chairman, if it is all possible, for you to visit there. I know that they would be delighted to have you, and I think that it is something that is an incredible achievement, and it's international as well, because it was a joint bid with Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, with Helmhunt and Christenfeld, thank you, whoever reminded me, Christenfeld in Denmark as well.
Nice aside.
That's incredible.
We could do them all.
I'm not suggesting you go and see them all, but I'm suggesting you go and visit Grace Hill.
We have written Grace Hill. We have mentioned a few times, yeah. So listen, thank you for that, Minister. I do want a couple of quick issues to just raise with you, just around timeliness of budgets and information on budgets. We're sitting now a week before November, and in terms of October monitoring, we have no information. So I would ask you to look at that, Minister. I'd also maybe ask that we get a written briefing on delivery of objectives within the departmental plan, just to bring us up to date across the range of issues in the plan. And also, just in that respect, Minister, to say to you that if we would like to maybe look at a situation where you're coming to committee on approximately 3-month or 12-week basis, so we can keep an eye, because it is a very large department with a lot of strands, and it's difficult in one session to keep up in touch with everything. So we'd like to see you back to committee on that sort of frequent basis.
I could just respond to that. First of all, I've accepted every invitation. I've come as soon as I can to this committee, and I have no difficulty at doing that at all. No difficulty answering questions and answering all the questions that you want to put to me, and I hope that I have done that today. I'm more than happy to provide any of the written briefing that you want. It is a considerable workload as well, some of the information that you're asking for. It is your right to do that, but just be aware that sometimes it's slower than maybe you would like, simply because of the volume of the information that's being collated together. And I will take this opportunity to put on public record my thanks to all of my officials who prepare for these meetings and prepare so much of the documentation. And in particular, I want to thank my private office, because you have been asking, which is your right, a lot of questions about diaries and meetings, and that has been a huge amount of work over the last couple of weeks to get you that information. And I have a fantastic private office team who are led really, really well by those staff, and I want to put that on the record. Another thing that I would just like to say, because I know this is an issue that Kelly had, was in relation to the ministerial box. And I just want to make it clear that if you send an email from your assembly address, it's a .gov.uk address, and sometimes my system thinks that you're speaking to us within the department. When the ministerial box is closed, that does not mean my email box is closed. All of your correspondence will be dealt with in the normal way. It's just the way that the private office organises submissions from my officials, and that does not mean that your emails are not responded to or that I am out of contact, because I know that's a concern, Kelly, that you'd expressed in the media, and I hope that allays some of your fears. We are not out of contact. When I am away on business, I am not out of contact. Your concerns will be taken in, they'll be addressed. For example, Naomi Long had done the exact same. Her box closes every afternoon at a certain time. It's closed at the weekends. That doesn't mean, I'm sure, that she's not taking those either. So I just wanted to clarify that. And
first time, I have to say, Minister, in all the years that I've been an MLA, when I've received such a long time of a private box. I don't believe that any previous ministers have had that message coming back to MLAs. Maybe it's something you could ask the private office to review.
And again, it wasn't, I suppose, for MLAs. It was for officials to let them know about subs. Mine was closed for that period of time. For information, just in case you want to raise it with her as well, Naomi Long's was closed from the 8th of October to the 20th as well.
I must say, Minister, I did actually email your private box about an issue and got a response pretty promptly, so it wasn't closed for me from that perspective. I got a response.
No, I got the agenda, or got the minutes from the LCC meeting, but it's somewhat concerning that maybe, if you want to set up an email address that's separate for MLAs, then that we can get through that wouldn't get such messages.
No, we can look to make sure that you don't get that message, but that is very clearly not my email box being closed. That is my box, as in the submissions that go in, and as you will see, you will get those replies. And I thank you for saying that, Andy, because I have an excellent team that work really, really hard to make sure we're as efficient as possible, and I just wanted to make that clear to the committee. I'm never out of touch.
Okay, well listen, thank you Minister. I know you've committed to sending forward some pieces of information in relation to today's meeting. We will check with members if there are any outstanding questions or whatever. We'll come back to you. I also want to thank your officials for coming to committee here and for bringing information to us on a regular basis. So thank you Minister, and thank you to your team, and we can let you get back to your busy day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, members, so I just want to check with you in terms of any follow-up actions that members think they would like to, and I'm sure the clerk has captured some of the things as we went along. So I'll go to Kelly first, then Morris.
Chair, as a member of a scrutiny committee, I am extraordinarily concerned about what the Minister has said about the ability for his department to provide the lead on the strategies that are coming forward. If his department are not collating how outcomes are being achieved, then what's the point? We know that there will be other departments that will be working to deliver outcomes from the strategies that his department are bringing forward. Surely there must be a way that a scrutiny committee will be able to do that without having to call half a dozen other committees together to do that. I think there's something we need to do with the Executive Office to probe why they're making it so difficult for a scrutiny committee, whenever a department has responsibility for a strategy, for that department not to be able to report to us on all of the outcomes, irrespective of which department they're with.
And indeed the question is it the executive or is it the department's approach? So I think we do need to bottom that out and to see how that is going to be going forward.
So can I confirm the question? Is it to the executive in terms of the scrutiny responsibility for the AP strategy, the anti-poverty strategy, or
any strategy? Because
where it's a cross-government strategy with one department in lead.
I think in relation to the anti-poverty strategy, it should go to both communities, just to get that in very clear in writing.
Any of the social strategies, there seems to be this belief that there's one strategy. There are many. There's the ageing one, there's the sex, the gender, everything. I am very concerned that as a scrutiny committee, our role is going to be hampered by the fact that some of the responsibilities to deliver the outcomes will be within other departments, and just because we're the Communities Committee and that's the Communities Department, that we'll be fobbed off and not given appropriate access to information, which is out with the recommendations of the RHI.
Okay, thank you. Morris?
Thanks, Chair. But a question I wanted to ask the Minister about, a question I had asked in the Chamber to the Infrastructure Manager in relation to water, wastewater and sewage. A breakdown constituency by constituency rather than have this blasé. It's the infrastructure, lack of infrastructure, and without actually telling us where the main problems in infrastructure really lie.
So sent that letter last week.
Yeah, that was sent. We agreed that last week.
You did?
Yeah.
We did. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Just touching on what Morris has said, and it's a conversation. It's not really for this committee, but even when you do drill into it with NA Water, you just get this general response. Yeah. There's no capacity. There's no capacity. There's no capacity. But when you challenge them, you tend to get past the hurdle and get through and get the thing started or sorted. But it just seems to be a standard response to us all from NA Water constantly. And I'm just wondering what the Minister's Department, what conversations they've had in relation to that, because it is the biggest hurdle, in my opinion, at the moment.
Yeah, and content to write because I am keen that we confine it to and we have plenty of responsibilities of our own in community. So but the Minister's discussions I think are valid. Point.
During house building, it's our
house building. Okay.
So Kelly and then Ciara.
Just to say, there's a few things that I had asked that the Minister wasn't furnished with the information about housing. We are in month 7 and the Housing Association's grant still hasn't been issued. How many houses are actually going to be started this year? This waffle about 600 houses is completely devoid of fact, given the fact that the grants haven't even gone out. It's just there's some of those things there if we can ask him to clarify.
Thank you, Kelly. Ciara?
I'm concerned that he had noted that there's a number of changes to the draft anti-poverty strategy. I don't know, as a committee, can we get a presentation on the current draft?
We have asked to be presented on the draft, and I think we reiterate that in terms of the urgency of it, given it's going to the department in January, that we seek that as soon as, and given we know there's changes. Yes.
There's also confusion about this because the Minister had said that the anti-poverty strategy was going to be consulted on in March.
Yeah.
But he says no.
There's
gonna
other
be,
community groups that it was going to be consulted on in March.
but yet they're saying it's not going to be consulted on. If we can just seek clarification on that, because the message.
We told it the PAC. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was something.
March was referred to in the PAC.
Yeah.
March was referred to in PAC, and that's why there has been various dates. I was glad to hear January confirmed, and I think we will expect that to happen.
Yeah.
But the draft, in terms of the draft strategy, we have asked the department to brief this committee on the draft strategy in order to underpin and find out what those changes are and the rationale for them. Brian?
Just in terms of the borrowing power for the housing sector, I heard more detail there about the approval from Treasury, so he suggested that we should write to the Finance Minister to raise with her. So if we can agree to do that, to ask, is she raising it with Treasury and what progress is being made?
I think he did indicate that he didn't think that's where the problem. He didn't think that's where the problem lay, but certainly it's worthwhile getting an update.
Yeah.
Certainly.
No, I would agree. It's a bit of a grey area regarding, it kind of referenced the fiscal framework. So I would like more detail around if there is any hurdles, where is it? Because we don't want it to be pushed back. There's a huge expectation, I think, not only by the Housing Executive and the Minister. He confirmed it's not the Finance Minister. So where is this issue where it could be pushed back? Is it the Treasury, and under what's the evidence base to suggest that it's being pushed back?
Can I confirm any progress in conversations with the Treasury, and if there's any specific hurdles and an anticipated time frame for the change then?
But can I just be very careful on this one, guys? And I'm going to keep on about this, and I will keep on, Chair, as time goes on. Where's the independence of the Housing Executive? If they are taking and making the decisions about where social housing is going to be provided, and they're building social housing, where is that good governance? It's not that I'm saying that the Housing Executive's useless, but to be honest, we're a scrutiny committee and we have to watch over this. This is public money. They were already turning down housing developments by rural or by other housing associations. They have a ton of land that they have under their belt, and it's unfair to others. So there's a good governance issue here. If they're going to be allowed to build again and to borrow, does that put the housing associations in a different place and them maybe prioritised? I think we just need to be very cautious. I would love to hear on the work that's happening how good governance is going to be maintained on that.
That is valid, and I would welcome you keeping that on the agenda, because I think that's...
Housing Executive,
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's the minister. To be honest, this nonsense goes on all the time. The Housing Executive is an arm's length body of the Department of Communities. So it is for the minister to make sure that the governance is there. The Housing Executive cannot wash its own face.
Sure, just on that, is it maybe prudent that we, as a scrutiny committee, as Kelly has highlighted, that we ask for engagement with the officials that would be responsible, given that the Minister has clearly articulated that this is a significant strand in his wider strategy to tackle homelessness and the housing issues, that we just understand and put some of these questions to the senior officials regarding that and just seek those assurances, whilst also writing just to see an update from Finance and I would argue Treasury as well, just to see where those things are, because we do need to do something. We all know there is a significant issue out there in our communities, and we need to look at every option available to us to try to address the problem.
Yep. Thank you.
Just in relation to the right to buy scheme, I know the Minister had referred particularly to the Housing Executive's borrowing powers, referred to what's happening in other parts of the UK or the Treasury, etc. But just specifically in the right to buy scheme, I think I'm right in this, and we need to just check. Are there other parts of the UK that have done away with it, put a moratorium in place, whatever?
I believe that we've asked Reyes to bring us a paper on that.
I think quite a lot of areas have.
Yeah. So we've asked Reyes to come back to us with a paper outlining that, but we believe that as well. I was disappointed, I have to say, with the response on that, and I think we will continue to. But I would like to see the Reyes paper, so we're talking from a factual basis in relation to it. But I think it's something that it does bear merit, I have to say.
So just on Kelly's issue and the good governance, and I know there was a range of models in the draft kind of case that went forward regarding the revitalisation for the Housing Executive. So are we going to get an update from the Housing Executive, because he did say that Grania Long is pushing ahead and being ready to go on this? So what was the final model that they're currently working on?
Sounds like it's all staying under the one roof, that the housing authority element and a social housing landlord is all going to be in the same place.
So is it just will either do right to Grania for an update on the model and the framework?
That's separate. At the minute, it's we're asking the Minister for clarification of the governance arrangements going forward and a briefing from the officials with management responsibility, Andy added, and an update on where the conversations are at with the Treasury.
What the potential time frame is to this, because every year that passes, the stock of the housing executive is depleting because they're selling more than more than we have. We're not building any.
It's just that issue on the housing executive. This has been going on for years. The revitalisation of the housing executive, and now there seems to be a quick rush at something because they've discovered a way that the housing executive can borrow. Wonderful if they can start building houses, but it's the fact that they have that housing authority policy leading part. They could give themselves beneficial options on building houses. Now, housing executive houses, if they're being built again, fabulous. But we just need to make sure the governance is right.
Yeah, and that they're being built where they're needed as well.
But to be honest, being built where they're needed, that I have a problem with that because they have turned down social... We've
rural areas.
88,000 people are sitting homeless at the minute and they're turning down the ability to build houses, not because of the money, because their allocation scheme says that nobody has applied in an area, which is wrong because people want houses.
Yeah, we've raised that before. We've said that they should build into the system. Where ideally would you like, and then where are you?
That's a very critical point, Kelly, because in actual fact, most people are applying for the areas they're most likely to get a house in, so therefore not applying for their direct area of preference. So
we have previously written asking them to consider adding an additional button on that, to say where do you want to be housed and then where are you applying for, so that it will capture. Can we follow up the response? We didn't get a response to that.
You can check that one.
Our thing through you, Chair, is the housing executives dictate on what can be built. I mean, I can go by my own constituency area and they seem to put an overemphasis on single units.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which they don't give any allowance for somebody in a single unit to find a partner, to develop into a family.
Yeah.
To become looking for a bigger house. That's a worry.
We have, I think, corresponded previously to them on that issue. On what have you raised it before?
We have, we have.
It's just obviously there's a range of issues, and we probably all have the same issues from a constituency level. And I have had a brief discussion with the police shippers within the housing executive, so I think it might be useful because they're only going within the confines of what they can regarding your single lets. They're solely based on the current waiting list, where of an individual applying, despite the fact they may have a family. So there is, I think they're frustrated as well. So, is there a possibility whether we ask for a meeting with the police shaping team within the housing executive to come in and kind of explain, because it is it's multi-layered, and there probably is a huge barriers or changes that need to happen, and we just need to unpick it, because I'm frustrated as well regarding there's no need in this area when we know the huge need across the city.
We are also we have a session today on forward planning, so that
if that could be included within that,
I fit all that in. And we are going to consider budget pension legislation here. Very briefly now, we need to wrap this up, folks.
It's on a different topic. In terms of follow up to the meeting.
Okay.
Just in terms of the support for the employability support. I mean, the Minister's looking up that person, Alex Norris, Under Secretary of State for Democracy and Local Growth. So appreciate the Minister's met with that and raised the issue. So can we write, given that this funding is Westminster funding currently, just to lobby on behalf and highlighting about the groups locally who are waiting on the future of shared prosperity funding?
There is some correspondence received since the pack went out, which would be due to come to the meeting immediately after recess. Do you want this action to go now, or do you want to consider that?
Just whether we also write Alex Norris.
It's from Alex Norris.
It's from him? Yeah. Okay, well that's useful then.
Our last letter,
So we'll have that coming to us.
Okay, that's good.
Very brief point, just back to the housing thing. The other big frustration is we're still building units where they're being built with that aren't overly accessible for an ageing population. So all of us have dealt with various constituents that require an adaptation, which the grant is now £70,000, by the way. If we were doing this right from the outset, then there'd be a huge long-term saving that needs to be looked at. Huge numbers of older people and vulnerable people were requiring downstairs adaptations to their house, and whether it be in the form of ground floor accommodation or not, any dwelling that's built should have a downstairs bedroom now. I think it's just it's a major issue for quite a significant portion of our population, and will continue to be. I know that in West Rome we're having significant issues in that regard.
I'm not aware of the issues around necessarily downstairs, but I think absolutely the future usability of housing needs to be built in and would save money down the line.
People stay in home for it's a home for life then, really.
Okay, members. So I'm aware we're significantly behind time. I'm going to take a short break now, and we're going to go into our pension session. But I'll take a short break there for 5-minute break, just a comfort break. I'm back again 2 minutes past 12, please. Thank you. And ask the clerk to take us out of broadcasting.
Committee Room 29, Sound. 29.
That's fine, yeah. So let me know when we're into broadcasting, please.
Actually confirmed open.
Okay, thank you, members. And so we are now moving on, members, to agenda item 7. And as we're going now to continue our deliberations on the pensions bill, I will ask members if you're agreed that we now go into closed session to continue that deliberation. Are members agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. And clerk, can you bring us out of broadcasting, please?
She confirmed open.
Thank you, clerk. So members, resuming there at item 8, clause by clause consideration of the pensions extension of automatic enrolment bill. So members, the committee will now commence the formal clause by clause consideration of the pensions extension of automatic enrolment. I will read out the title of the clause before I ask the formal question on it. Members, if you have any final comments, please alert me at that stage before I read out the formal question clause on the clause as to whether the committee is content with each clause as drafted or amended. So, moving now to clause 1, automatic enrolment, persons and earnings affected. So I will ask, is the committee content with clause 1 as amended by the committee?
To clarify, is that page 146 then in the main pack? Or is this
Confirm that for you now,
or is this the on the amended pack, on the table pack?
We're at agenda item 8 on your main pack, Brian.
Yeah.
Whatever page that may be.
When you're saying clause 1, is that on page 146?
No, 211.
211.
211, agenda item 8.
Okay, so I'll just repeat that question then. Is the committee content with clause 1 as amended by the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. I'm just clarifying, is this the wording in the table pack though?
Yes.
The amendment in the table pack, yes. The amendment is in the table pack at page
Yes.
34.
Well, I'm going to abstain on that matter.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you, members. So the committee is content with clause 1 as drafted by the department. Our members, as amended. So the committee is content with clause 1 as amended by the committee. Yeah, thank you. Moving on then to the committee is content with clause 1 as amended by the committee. Are members agreed?
Agreed.
Clause 2, commencement and short title. So is the committee content with clause 2 as drafted by the department?
Yes.
Yep. So therefore, the committee is content with clause 2 as drafted by the department. Are members agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you, members. So members, that concludes the committee's formal clause by clause consideration of the pensions extension of automatic enrolment bill. I would like to thank departmental officials, Haley and Richard, for their support and patience with our queries, Stephen Orme from the Assembly Bill Office for his support, as well as Eleanor Murphy from RAISE. And I'd also like to thank the committee staff here, our own staff on the committee, for all the work they have done in getting us through this. Members, our committee report, which is substantially drafted, will need to be brought back now to our next meeting for final consideration. So we'll take the report at our meeting on the 7th of November. Okay? So moving on, members, then to consideration of draft committee. Yeah, so we're moving that entire section on the committee report to next week. So,
Item 9, page
so
15.
item, what page, clerk?
15.
Yep. So moving then on, members, to agenda item 9, which is our forward work programme, a copy of which is at page 213. Do members have any comments, or are they content to note the forward work programme? Content, thank you, members. Any other business, members? No other business. So, members, if I can just say before I close the meeting to remind us that we are now going to move into closed session to consider our strategic planning for the next period ahead. That will last around 1 hour, so we may get that done a bit sooner if we can, but I'll ask members to stay on if possible for that. So, final agenda and item agenda and open is date, time and location of the next meeting. Our next meeting will be at 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 7th of November 2024, here in room 29, Parliament Buildings. And the meeting is now adjourned, and I would ask the clerk to take us out of broadcasting.
Committee Room 29, Sound.